when a 90-year-old woman was rushed into River Falls Medical Center in the dead of night, clutching her stomach in pain. No one was prepared for what came next. February 7th, 2025, 4:12 a.m. The ER buzzed with flickering fluorescent lights and the eerie stillness of a snow-blanketed world outside. Inside, Dr. Evelyn Harper, 62, a hardened veteran of countless emergencies, sipped cold tea, unaware her most unforgettable case was seconds away. The doors slid open. Paramedics rolled in Margaret Lane, frail, trembling, and clearly in distress. Her tangled silver hair framed piercing eyes that locked onto Dr. Harper with unnerving clarity, as if she'd arrived with a secret too big for the room to hold. Abdominal pain. No fever. Vitals stable. One paramedic reported. Routine. Or so it seemed. But when Dr. Harper lifted Margaret's gown, everything stopped. This wasn't a tumor. It wasn't gas. It was pregnancy. A 90-year-old woman, carrying life. The room fell into silence. This wasn't just medicine. It was a miracle or something far stranger. The examination room was colder than it should have been, or perhaps it was the weight of the impossible pressing against the walls. Margaret lay on the gurney, her hands folded over her chest, fingers tracing the edge of a worn silver locket she never removed. Her face, etched with decades of lines, held a stillness that wasn't peace. It was surrender or maybe defiance. Evelyn stood beside her, her stethoscope dangling, her mind racing to reconcile what her eyes confirmed. The ultrasound screen flickered, revealing a fetus, 28 weeks, heart pulsing steadily, a life where none should be. Margaret didn't speak, didn't explain. Her gaze drifted to the ceiling, as if searching for answers in the tiles. Evelyn's voice, when it came, was soft, deliberate. "Margaret, can you tell me when it started?" No response, just a slow rise and fall of her chest, the locket glinting under the light. Evelyn tried again. "The pain, how long?" Margaret's lips parted, her voice a whisper, cracked like old porcelain. "Months. I thought it was time catching up. Not this." Evelyn glanced at the nurse, Sarah, who stood frozen by the monitor. The paramedics had mentioned Margaret lived alone in a small house on Maple Street, no family. No visitors. A neighbor, Clara, had called 911 after finding her doubled over in her garden. Clara waited in the hall now, her coat still dusted with snow, her hands wringing a handkerchief. Evelyn stepped out to meet her. "She's been tired," Clara said, voice trembling, withdrawn. "I thought it was her age. Her heart, maybe. She stopped coming to book club last summer. Said she didn't feel right." Evelyn nodded, her mind cataloging. Fatigue, isolation, abdominal swelling. Symptoms that could mean anything, cancer, organ failure, except what the ultrasound showed. Did she mention anyone new in her life? A caregiver, a friend? Clara shook her head. Margaret keeps to herself. Always has, since her husband passed. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "When was that?" 1965, Clara replied. "Car accident. She never remarried." Back in the room, Evelyn sat beside Margaret, her chart untouched. The locket caught her eye again, its surface scratched but deliberate, like it held more than a photo. "Margaret," she said gently, "I need to understand how this happened. It's extraordinary." Margaret's fingers tightened around the locket. "Some things," she murmured, "aren't meant to be understood, just carried." Evelyn leaned closer. "You're safe here. Whatever you're holding, you can share it." Margaret's eyes met hers, sharp, almost accusing. "Safe? No one's safe from the past." The words hung, heavy. A door cracked open to a story Evelyn couldn't yet see. Why would a 90-year-old woman hide a pregnancy? What past was she carrying? The hospital settled into its rhythm, monitors beeping, carts rolling, voices muffled behind closed doors. Margaret slept now, sedated for pain, her locket resting against her collarbone. Evelyn stood at the nurse's station. The ultrasound images spread before her. The fetus was healthy, no anomalies, but the math was impossible. Margaret's medical records showed menopause decades ago, her last physical unremarkable. Evelyn's fingers traced the images, her mind grappling with the unexplainable. She'd read about rare cases, late pregnancies in women in their 50s, assisted by fertility treatments. But 90? No science supported this. Yet the heartbeat on the screen was undeniable, a rhythm that mocked every textbook she'd ever read. Clara lingered in the waiting area, her handkerchief now a crumpled ball. Evelyn approached, her voice low. Did Margaret ever talk about her husband? Her life before? Clara's eyes softened. She mentioned Samuel once or twice. Said he was her North Star. After he died, she locked herself away, figuratively and literally. Never let anyone too close. Evelyn nodded, picturing a woman who built walls higher than her small frame suggested. Did she ever mention children? Clara shook her head. She wanted them, I think, but it never happened. She used to sit in her garden, staring at the roses like they held answers. Evelyn's gaze drifted to the locket in her mind. Did she ever show you what's in her locket? Clara frowned. No, she never takes it off, not even to bathe. Back in the room, Evelyn studied Margaret's sleeping form. The locket gleamed, a silent witness to whatever truth she wasn't sharing. Evelyn reached for a notepad and pen, placing them on the tray beside the bed. When you're ready, she whispered, write it down, or draw it. Whatever feels right. Margaret didn't stir, but her fingers twitched, as if the locket itself was listening. Evelyn stepped back, her thoughts spiraling. A pregnancy at 90 wasn't just a medical anomaly. It was a story, one rooted in a past Margaret guarded like a wound. What was she protecting? Who was she protecting? Hours later, Evelyn returned to find a single sheet of paper on the tray. Folded once, Margaret's handwriting faint but deliberate. It's not mine. It's hers. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She glanced at Margaret. Still asleep, her face softer now, almost childlike. Hers. Who was she? A daughter? A memory? Evelyn unfolded the paper further. A sketch, crude but unmistakable. A rose, petals falling, and beside it, a hand holding a locket. No face, no body, just a hand, a rose, and a shadow stretching across the page. Evelyn's breath caught. The shadow wasn't a person. It was time itself, looming over a secret buried decades ago. Why was Margaret carrying someone else's truth? Evelyn sat in her office, the sketch beside her, the locket's image burning in her mind. She pulled Margaret's records again, digging deeper. A 1965 hospital admission caught her eye. Margaret Lane, 30, treated for severe bruising and a fractured wrist after a car accident. The same accident that killed Samuel. The report noted no other passengers, but a nurse's handwritten comment stood out. Patient incoherent, kept asking for her. Evelyn's fingers paused. Her, the same word Margaret had written. She cross-referenced local records from 1965. A missing persons case, buried in archives. Elizabeth Lane, 7, Margaret's niece, vanished the same night as the accident. No body found. Case closed in 1967. Margaret had been her guardian after her sister's death. Evelyn's heart sank. She called Clara back. Did Margaret ever mention a niece? Elizabeth? Clara's face paled. Once, years ago. She said Elizabeth was her light, then gone. She blamed herself. Said she should have held her closer that night. Evelyn pressed. What night? Clara's voice dropped. The accident. Margaret was driving. Samuel died and Elizabeth disappeared. Margaret never forgave herself. Evelyn's mind raced. The locket, the sketch, the pregnancy. Pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit, yet refused to be ignored. Was Margaret's pregnancy tied to Elizabeth? A delusion born of grief? Or something more? She returned to Margaret's room, the sketch in hand. Margaret was awake, her eyes clearer now, but guarded. Evelyn sat beside her, holding the paper gently. Margaret, who's her? Margaret's fingers tightened around the locket. Elizabeth, she whispered. My niece. I lost her. Evelyn nodded, her voice soft. The accident? Margaret's eyes glistened. I was driving. Samuel was drunk, angry. We fought. I didn't see the truck. Elizabeth was in the back. When I woke, she was gone. Her voice broke. I looked for her every day. I never stopped. Evelyn leaned closer. The locket. Margaret opened it, revealing a tiny photo, a girl with Margaret's eyes, smiling. Her mother gave it to me. I promised to keep her safe. Evelyn's thoughts churned. Margaret, the pregnancy, how? Margaret's gaze drifted to window. I don't know. I felt her months ago, like she was calling me. I thought I was dying, but then I felt life. Evelyn's skin prickled. You think this is Elizabeth? Margaret's voice was steady now. Certain? She's come back. Not to me, but through me. Evelyn didn't argue. Science screamed impossibility. But Margaret's conviction was a force of its own. Was this a miracle? A breakdown? Or something no one could name? Evelyn enlisted Dr. Thomas Chun, a geneticist, to run tests. The results were staggering. The fetus's DNA showed markers consistent with Margaret's family line, impossibly close to her own. Chun shook his head, muttering about spontaneous genetic anomalies, but Evelyn saw Margaret's face when she heard. Relief, not surprise. It's her, Margaret said, clutching the locket. Evelyn didn't push. She called a social worker, Lena, to dig into Elizabeth's case. Lena uncovered a 1965 police report. A witness saw a child matching Elizabeth's description with a man near the accident site, never traced. The man, a drifter, vanished. Margaret had never been told. Evelyn sat with Margaret, sharing the report. Did anyone approach you after the accident? Someone who knew Elizabeth. Margaret's eyes darkened. A man came to the house, weeks later. Said he was a friend of Samuel's. Asked about Elizabeth. Said he'd seen her. I thought he was lying, trying to hurt me. I sent him away. Evelyn's heart pounded. Did he come back? Margaret nodded. Once. Left a rose on my porch. I never saw him again. Evelyn's mind flashed to the sketch. The rose, the shadow. Margaret. Could he have taken her? Margaret's hands trembled. I didn't want to believe it. But yes. Lena's research deepened. The drifter, James Colton, died in 1980, but his sister, alive in Richmond, confirmed he bragged about saving a girl from a wreck. No proof, no charges. Evelyn sat with Margaret, piecing it together. Elizabeth might have survived but been taken. The pregnancy, it's not Elizabeth, but it could be her lineage. Margaret's eyes widened. Her child. Evelyn nodded. We're testing further, but the DNA suggests a close relative. Margaret's voice broke. She's reaching out. Through me. The hospital room was softer now, the light warmer, as if the world had exhaled. Margaret sat up, her locket open, Elizabeth's photo catching the sun. Evelyn stood by, holding the final genetic report. The fetus was a girl, a direct descendant of Margaret's sister, Elizabeth's child or grandchild, carried through a medical impossibility. Chun called it a parthenogenetic anomaly, a rare case where an unfertilized egg began dividing, triggered by grief, trauma, or something science couldn't name. But Margaret didn't need science. She named the child Elizabeth Rose. Lena found a woman in Baltimore, 32, adopted, with Elizabeth's eyes. Her DNA matched the fetus's. Her adoptive records traced back to a Richmond orphanage, 1966. Elizabeth had survived, raised in secret, and died in 1995, leaving a daughter, Margaret's grandniece. The woman, Emily, arrived at the hospital, hesitant, unaware of her past. When she met Margaret, their eyes locked, and the locket fell open between them. She's yours, Margaret whispered, touching Emily's hand. And hers. Emily's tears fell silently, a family reunited through a miracle no one could explain. Evelyn watched them, her own eyes stinging. The pregnancy couldn't be sustained. Margaret's body was too frail. But the truth it carried was enough. Margaret had carried Elizabeth's legacy, her love, her loss, through decades of silence, and now, through a child who would never be born, she'd found her family. The room filled with quiet, so profound it felt like prayer. Margaret smiled, her hand on Emily's. I kept my promise, she said. I held her close. Outside, snow melted under a tentative spring sun. Evelyn stood by the window, the locket's glint still in her mind. Some truths were too big for medicine, too deep for words. Margaret's miracle wasn't the pregnancy. It was a love that refused to let go, the past that found its way home. And in that hospital room, a 90-year-old woman and a stranger whose family proved that sometimes the heart carries what the body cannot. The snow outside River Falls Medical Center had melted into rivulets, carving paths through the earth as spring whispered its arrival. Margaret sat in her hospital bed, weaker now, her locket open, Emily at her side. The room was no longer a sterile cage, but a sanctuary, its walls holding the echo of a love that had defied time, science, and loss. Evelyn stood by the window, watching the first crocuses pierce the soil, their fragile petals defiant against the cold. She thought of Margaret's roses, tended through decades of solitude, each bloom a silent vow to Elizabeth. The pregnancy was no anomaly. It was a bridge, built from grief, spanning 60 years to bring a family home. Margaret's hand rested on Emily's, their fingers entwined, the locket between them. "I thought I'd lost her forever," Margaret said, her voice steady, eyes bright with a peace Evelyn hadn't seen before. Emily, still grappled with her own unearthed past, leaned closer, her voice a whisper. "You found me." The words broke something in Evelyn, a dam of emotion she'd held through years of saving lives but rarely touching them. This was no medical victory. This was a miracle of the heart, a testament to a love so fierce it rewrote the rules of life itself. Days later, Margaret's strength faded, her body unable to carry what her spirit had summoned. But she faced the end with a smile, her locket pressed to her chest, Emily's hand in hers. "I carried her," she murmured, her final words a vow fulfilled. When she slipped away, the room didn't darken. It glowed as if the love she'd held for Elizabeth had spilled into the air, warming it, softening it. Emily stayed, clutching the locket, her tears not of loss but of discovery. She'd been found not just by Margaret, but by a truth that refused to stay buried. Evelyn stood outside, the spring sun warm on her face, the world alive with possibility. Margaret's story wasn't about a pregnancy. It was about a woman who loved so deeply that time couldn't erase it, who carried a promise through decades of silence until it bloomed into a miracle. And as Evelyn watched Emily walk away, the locket around her neck, she knew this wasn't the end. It was a beginning. Somewhere in a garden of roses, Margaret and Elizabeth were together again, their love eternal. Their story a reminder that some bonds are stronger than science, stronger than death. They bloom forever in the heart's quiet soil, waiting for someone to see.